question. And do you ever wonder how you suddenly, how did you suddenly get here? Like, not here, but here. How do you suddenly get here? Well, I have a story to tell you. When I was 16, I was living in this small town outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania called Portview. A little town where boys went to college, but girls, not so much. Really, not at all. It was 1970. And one day, I'm sitting there on the stairs of my parents' home where I lived, and I'm waiting for my big brother Vince to come home. He's coming home from college, and not just any college, he's coming home from Yale University. The first person ever in our community to go to an Ivy League school, big deal, right? And I can't wait for my big brother to come home because I want to see him, but I have some big news for him, and I kind of need his help. So I'm waiting, and he shows up, and I run down the stairs, and I'm like, I need your help. And he's like, Wendy, what's wrong? And I'm like, well, nothing's wrong, but I mean, he knew that I loved to sew. He had seen all of these clothes I had made for many, many years, and now I had these scarves that I had just made. And they were chiffon, and the colors were pink, and they were purple, and they exploded, and they harmonized. And New York City needed to see my scarves. I was sure of that. They needed Denise Restauri's scarves. I didn't care who else was making scarves, it didn't matter. But I only had $25. So I thought I needed 25 more, and that's where I needed my brother's help. So I'm like, can you please give me $25? I gotta get to New York, they've gotta see my scarves. And this is where an Ivy League education pays off, because he was able to say, I think you're going to need more than $50 to get back and forth to New York. And that's why he went to college. So he's like, and I think we need a better plan. And we did, we came up with a better plan. So on Monday morning, I go to school, and I go to the guidance counselor, and I'm like, I got it. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to FIT in New York City. And she looks at me, and she's like, you want to be a designer? You don't know how to draw. Boom, right? I'll do that. Boom. And she said, New York City? A girl like you in New York City? You'll get eaten alive. Boom, I won't do that to your ears again. The third one, she says, but wait, I know exactly what you need to do. You are so smart, you're a straight A student. You need to be a secretary because you can help somebody else succeed. You can't make this shit up, okay? So I do that because she knows best. She's my guidance counselor. But I'm not just any secretary. I am the best damn secretary that God ever created, right? I type at 100+ words a minute, no mistakes. Now this is in the days of this, we didn't have even this electric typewriters then. We had the Royal, you know, the ones you see in the antique stores now? They were the ones we were actually using. So you type and you type that one. And so you didn't have anything to correct, you used whiteout. And I wasn't going to use whiteout because you could see that you used whiteout, and that would mean I made a mistake. That wasn't happening. So I perfected it, and I typed really fast and perfect. And I get a job. I'm 17 years old, just graduated from high school, and I get a job at a bank, Western Pennsylvania National Bank. And I save enough money in a year to buy my first car, a little red convertible, a Triumph Spitfire. I know, I wish I had it now. I know. And that guidance counselor didn't think I had it in me to get to New York. So that car, though, was my car to freedom and my way to find Reinvention City. So first stop is Washington, D.C. Once again, this is in the days we didn't have the internet. So I get to Washington, I have 1 month's worth of rent saved, and I have no job. I have a friend who lives there, and I look in the one ads on Sunday, and it says, Secretary Honeywell. And Honeywell was a big company in those days, and I go for the interview in the suit that I made, and I get the job. And then I got another job a couple years later as a junior lobbyist for an organization called American Sugarcane League. Don't even ask how that happened, except that someone said, there's an opportunity, and I was like, hell yeah. And then someone said, you should be in sales. And I'm like, hell yeah. And then suddenly, 20 years later,
I become Vice President of Sales for USA Today.
Really?
And thank you. Thank you. And I'm leading the team that makes us the #1 newspaper in the nation. And I am jet setting around the country in Gulf Streams and champagne is flowing from anything that has a pipe. It's like, life is grand, it is grand, right? And I am wearing designer clothes, Gucci, Prada, because if I couldn't be a designer, I was gonna wear a designer. And life is great. Along the way, I get married, I have this great job, I'm married, and there was one thing I was missing, and that was I wanted a child. Well, this is a small group, I'll be perfectly honest. I didn't want just a child, I wanted a baby girl. I would have had a baby boy, I would have taken him, no offense to you guys, but I really wanted a baby girl. And then suddenly I became a statistic. The doctor said, Denise, a woman with your condition, 10% chance of getting pregnant. I was in my 30s. Denise, a woman at your age, I was 33, 32 when it started. At your age, 18% of getting pregnant. Everyone told me I couldn't do it. And then I went through 7 years of infertility. Let me go back a step. Because everyone said I couldn't do it, but I did, because suddenly I found my daughter in the penny saver. Because I figured out there's more than one way to have a child. You don't have to give birth, you can adopt. And I'll tell you the story behind how I found my daughter in the penny saver. So one day, I'm 39 years old, I have 7 years of infertility treatment, miscarriages, and nothing is working. I was that statistic. And I decide that adoption is really for me, really is for me. And I meet a birth mother, she gives birth, I have the baby for 2 days, I name her Danielle, and the birth mother takes her back. And it's legal. And I'm devastated. I go to work and I go through the motions. I come home and I just stare at the wall. And one day I was on the stairs, there's something with me in the stairs, I was on the stairs and I was just like, I couldn't move, I was paralyzed. I was just crying and sobbing. And I meet a woman who has a baby boy, and she tells me her story. And she says, I too had a fall through. On my adoption, the birth mother took my first baby back as well. And I'm like, okay, so how did you get this baby boy? Because that's all I want to know is how I'm going to get my child. And she says, okay, don't think I'm crazy, but I put an ad in the penny saver. And I'm like thinking, okay, I'm not going to judge you, but that is a little crazy that we're putting ads in penny saver to get a kid, okay? So that goes on. I know I'm working with an adoption agency, one of the best adoption attorneys in Washington, D.C., but I decide I'm going to do something on my own every day, but I'm not going to spend more than 20 minutes a day. I have a big job at USA Today, I'm busy. But I wanted to do something. So I do something, I write to and call local universities and faraway universities with, if any girls at your school are pregnant and want to do adoption, please let me know. Just something, I just had to feel like I was moving it forward, which is a lesson I've learned in life, is a good thing for most. Just spend up to 20 minutes every day to accomplish something that you want, and strange things happen. So one day I'm going to a day of meetings, and it's like that hits me, I haven't done anything today. So I think I have to do something, and all I think of is the penny saver. So I call up the penny saver, and I'm like, I have an ad, I got 5 minutes, here's my credit card, put the ad in, and the guy says, we have a 2-week special, it'll run over Christmas. No one's gonna call you over Christmas. I'm like, I don't really care, I have like 5 minutes, and you just put the ad in, here's my credit card, just put the ad in. Put the ad in. Christmas Eve day, December 24th, I get a phone call from a woman who says, you're going to think I'm crazy, which is like a common thread in this story. You're going to think I'm crazy, but my daughter is 15 years old and she's 7 months pregnant, and I just found out yesterday that she's pregnant. Now, there's a reason for that. Her daughter wasn't showing. This is the days when we wore leggings and oversized tops, and she could see her daughter was picking up a little bit of weight but didn't want to say anything, so it's not like she was this negligent mother. She just never saw that her daughter was pregnant. And she said, and I saw your ad in the penny saver because before I knew my daughter was pregnant, I was looking for a dog for my daughter in the penny saver. And under the ad for the dog was an ad about a woman, Denise, wanting to adopt a child. And I paid attention to it because my daughter Jessica, her godmother's daughter, is named Denise. And I thought, how sad is this that people who want to have children can't have children? And when I found out my daughter was pregnant, I thought, that was it. And so suddenly, I'm a mother of a beautiful, beautiful baby girl. I named her Alexandra. And then suddenly, 5 years later, I'm getting divorced. And even if you initiate the divorce, that doesn't mean you want the divorce. And everything on paper in my life looked great. I had a big house in Washington, D.C. My husband had a restaurant that looked like it was going great. I did have a beautiful daughter. And I had that shiny job in that shiny office at USA Today. It all looked great. And behind the scenes, it was all falling apart. I was getting divorced. I'm moving out of this 7,000 square foot house that I just bought the year before. That wasn't a dream house, but it was that house of dreams. I could see my daughter where she was going to get married. I knew exactly where the cars were going to park. She was 5. And I knew it all. I could see it all. And now I'm just sitting in a walk-in closet. It's emptied out, and I'm sobbing. I'm on the floor. Again, the stairs, the floor. I know, there is a thing. And I'm on the floor, and I'm sobbing. And this moving man, he's like this 6'4" burly guy with a do-rag on, who is sweating because it's August in Washington, it's like 110 degrees, and the air conditioning doesn't work because the door's open. But he comes into the walk-in closet and he sits down with me. He puts his arm around me and he's like, honey, I've been watching you all day, and you just lost your groove. You need to find your groove. And I think of all the advice I've gotten from therapists in all these years, I'm getting some of the best advice ever from the moving man with the do-rag. And suddenly I find my groove. So I quit USA Today, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. I've been at USA Today 16 years now, so this wasn't like overnight, this didn't happen so quickly. And I'm going to be that entrepreneur, and I do it. And I financially fail. Big time. I did everything you're not supposed to do. I depleted the IRA, I refinanced the house, I did everything you're not supposed to do. But that financial failure was one of my biggest successes in life. And I'm not just saying that to make myself feel better. At one point I was, but I really do believe it. Because that's what led me to what I'm doing. It led me really authentically into the lives of young women like Tammy and women, she's the first, who are changing the world. And so one day, I'm sitting on the floor again, but this time I'm not crying. I'm mapping out a strategy for a new company called GirlQuake, because girls are shaking things up. And I look up the domain on GoDaddy, and for $7.99, I buy my company, GirlQuake.com. And suddenly, I'm sitting in the office of somebody, a bigwig at Forbes, saying, you know, I have all these stories about young women who are changing the world. Can I use your platform? Can I just, write about them on Forbes? And he says, yes. And suddenly, I get a call from Forbes, and they say, can you moderate a panel? We're doing this big event with Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey, and we have a panel with Melinda Gates and Diane von Furstenberg and Jacqueline Novogratz, and we would love for you to moderate it. Can you moderate it? And I'm like, well, hell yeah. And then I hang up, and I call my speaking coach from 20 years ago, who I had not talked to in 20 years. I'm like, help! Which was something she was used to hearing me say 20 years ago a lot. And so she didn't even have to say, who is this? I'm not making that up either. I'm like, help! She's like, I just said I was going to moderate a panel, and I never moderated a panel, because they didn't ask me, have you ever moderated a panel? They said, can you moderate a panel? And I said, hell yeah. And then suddenly, Forbes is calling me and saying, we're going to launch a podcast. Would you like to be a host? Once again, I'm like, well, hell yeah. And then I'm like, what does a podcast host do exactly? I never listened to a podcast in my life. And suddenly, I'm the mother, my daughter is 24 years old, I have a wonderful husband, I have life filled with joy. I'm surrounded by some of the most amazing young women and women of all ages. And suddenly I'm 63. And I realized that my word now is decadence. And not decadence like the Gucci and the Prada clothes that I used to wear when I was at USA Today. But decadence in that vanilla ice cream, that homemade vanilla ice cream, when you look at it and it looks vanilla, but those beans, those vanilla beans, and you take a bite and those flavors explode, that decadence. And suddenly I realized that nothing great happens suddenly. And if you're wondering about that young girl who was sitting on the stairs and thinking, oh, but her dream didn't come true, well, I'm standing here to tell you that it sure did, because I reimagined it. I reinvented my life. And I realized that all along, that bowl of vanilla ice cream has been sitting in front of me all of my life. But I had to go on this journey to come back to it, to be able to find the magic in those vanilla beans. And I realize now that suddenly, I'm on the journey of my lifetime. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for She's the First, and thank you, Michael. Thank you all.
There's no way in hell you're 63. She has all these amazing stories that she goes, I'm 63. I'm like, the whole story I lost. I'm like, there's no way. So first off, what's the secret? Is there a face cream? Is there a, like, let's just, because that's what the audience is really wondering.
Susan Seminelli.
Who?
Susan Seminelli. So
Oh,
Susan
is that the-
Seminelli is a dear friend of mine. She has a spa here in products.
Oh, so there is a secret, see?
It's really my mother.
Everyone's ready to know. I actually had to write notes on the back of a drink ticket. You mentioned my word. My word is, what do you mean your word is? Like, do you pick a word? Did the word come to you? Like, have you always had a word?
No, I haven't. It just came to me because somebody that Tammy and I know was just in Paris, and she was writing an email and she said something about decadence, and I thought, I want to be decadent. But not in what we think of decadence, but of that vanilla bean.
Yeah, I love that idea of the vanilla bean, you know, the decadence like vanilla bean, and this imagery, right? There's actually a book, I highly recommend it. It's a short book. If I read it, it's short, promise you, okay? It's called The One Word, is what it's called. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called The One Word, and every year, I always pick a word. So I didn't know if like you picked a word, but the word came to you.
Right, well, Tammy picks a word.
Tammy picked the word for me.
No, she does pick words.
Oh, you pick a word.
Yes.
What, do you pick a word every year?
Usually. I can't remember what my word is.
So right now I'm putting you on the spot. You can't
So
remember.
much for that theory.
My word this year was fulfillment, and here we are with the Legacy Show. Which, by the way, talking of real quick, going back to your guidance counselor story. My guidance counselor, I remember his name was, I'm going to say it's Mr. Wilbur was his name, and
Was that his last name or his first name? Mr. Wilbur.
you know, I don't know. I have no idea. I actually don't. You know, as a kid, you just expect that's your name. You are Mr. Wilbur. So Mr. Wilbur, and he sat me down, and he's like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Kind of thing, which I think is the most obnoxious question to ask anyone, especially a 17-year-old. And I said, "I want to produce theater, and I want to do things in theater." And he brought me in his office no less than 3 times, saying, "I just think you're making a mistake. You're never going to be able to make a living." And I just was like, but I know this is what I'm supposed to do. And it's scary to me that educators are enforcing that mentality. Like, why is he not saying, how are you going to do it? Who have you talked to has done it? And man, you know, there's times I want to be like, call him up and be like, dude, I'm doing it, you know? But it's not about that.
You can't find Mr. Wilbur in the phone book.
I can't. You probably. There's a lot of us who are like, forget Mr. Wilbur. But his intention was right? And so here you are creating the podcast. Is it about women, for women? Like, what is the main theme of
So the podcast is really for women to share our triumphs and our skids and tell our vulnerable stories so we can help democratize mentoring. So it came about because I heard too many women saying, I don't have time to mentor younger women. And some of that might be legit, some of it I questioned, but I wasn't changing them. So I thought, how do we take their stories though? Because stories are powerful. And how do we take those stories and how do we spread the word? And I've got a great platform with Forbes. So how do I use that platform and share it with others? So we share our triumphs and our skids and really kind of get vulnerable. And as Libby said it in the podcast, Libby said she's dropping a V-bomb.
The B-bomb?
The V-bomb, the vulnerable.
Oh, the vulnerable bomb. I'm thinking every feed word but vulnerable. Yeah, chances of that. Biscuits? Which if you want to see, it is an amazing podcast.
Thank you.
And it's up on the screen, Mentoring Moments. It's on Forbes. I'm sure you could just Google Denise Restauri, Mentoring Moments.
Just Google Mentoring. It's on iTunes. It's on. I say it is great because the women are just great. They're just great. They tell their true stories that they have to dig deep sometimes to find them. I always tell someone, if you can't tell that story because of your job, whatever, then don't come on podcasts. Find something else. There's nothing that's wrong. I get that you might not be able to tell that story, but this isn't that podcast that you can't tell that story.
Right, and it's great to give that platform and have the speakers with the V, right? You know, to be vulnerable for that during the podcast, to be able to mentor others. Because like our guidance counselors, authority figures in our lives back then, saying no, you're saying yeah.
Right.
Yeah, do it.
They can do it. They can do it.
Make the change. So one of the things that, besides stairs, which is again, and you're crazy, right? Or wait, so you're crazier, or you think you're going to think it's crazy.
This is crazy.
This is crazy. So one of the themes that I constantly heard was these moments of watershed. You weren't able to, the first adoption fell through. You had to make a choice, right? The penny saver made the choice. The divorce made the choice. Leaving the job made the choice. So I think that takes a lot of courage, was a word that came up before with Reinvention. So for those of us out here, or whether it's a big change or a small change, change is scary. Our amygdalas do not like change. So how do you make those watershed moment choices? Is it easy? Is it hard?
No, they're hard. Right? Getting divorced was the hardest thing I ever decided to do in my life. It took more courage to do that than anything. I was a mother. I went against everything I grew up with. No, they're never easy. And you never know, are they the right decision or the wrong decision? You can only make it for in that moment. The information you have, you've got to make it with the best information you have, and then move forward. And for the longest time, I beat myself up about my financial failure because my department at USA Today we produced 50% of the company's revenue. That's huge. It's millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. I know how to make money. That's what I do. But I couldn't do it in what I was doing. And I could give you a million reasons. One is I was too passionate. I was following what everybody else was telling me to do versus saying, stop. This is what I didn't believe in myself enough. Because I was in a new world that I just didn't understand, and so I was believing everybody else. Who most people had good intentions, there were a few that didn't, but the majority of them did. But they were doing what was good for their agenda, which is not, I think it's a common thing we all do, right? It's not that you have to be a bad person to want to do something on your agenda. So they're all hard. That making those changes and saying that I'm going to close down one company, when I shut down the company that failed and opened the new company, was hard. It was really hard. And you don't know if the new was going to work. But I had to quit beating myself up for that financial failure. And my husband would always say to me, just stop, you stop. It's really an investment in you. It's not a financial failure. Why can't you look at this? If you want to get logical, why can't this be that education you never got, right? And I've taken tons of classes. I've gone to Wharton, I've gone to MIT. I speak at Stanford, and I'm a professor of Glasgow, an honorary professor. So I've taken a ton of classes, but I never had that degree. And so he was like, hey, why can't you look at this as that investment in you, that this is your college degree in entrepreneurship. That wasn't registering when you're like saying, I know how to make money, but I can't.
So, as you're making these changes, you went from this big executive position to being an entrepreneur, in your words, failing, at least financially, right? Was it scarves by any way? But
No, no.
it wasn't. Did you ever do anything with the scarves?
No.
I wear a lot of them now, but.
We're gonna start. There's gonna be the Denise scarf collection that comes out next year. But did people ever say, like, you're crazy for leaving the job, you're crazy for trying another company, you're crazy for doing journalism for Forbes, like, did you get that you're crazy?
Oh, sure. When I left USA Today, when I was feeling really vulnerable, a guy says to me, I can't believe you left USA Today with all of the security and the big salary you have, and you're a single parent without alimony, without child support. How irresponsible can you be? And I lived with that for the longest time. That as Libby, I told Libby this, and we talked about this in the podcast, that this might not be an exact quote, but Libby said, he was putting his crap on you. So he was putting his fears on me.
So-
A lot of women thought I was really courageous. They were like, yes, you got out of US, you left USA Today, you left the Forbes, because everybody wants to do that, right? You want to be your own boss.
So what's your advice, whether it's your mother or a parent or a partner who's like, you're crazy, you're being irresponsible, right? The irresponsible word there. What would your advice be to anyone out there who wants to be responsibly irresponsible? How do you work through that? You know what? There's a lot of voices out there telling me, no, don't do it, but I know I want change. How do you work through that? How does someone work through that?
I just think you have to do it, right? I mean, you just have to, and I tell this to young women all the time, because a lot of young women are influenced so much by their parents and their professors. And sometimes you just have to do it. You just have to be able to go out and do it. You can't listen to everybody. You gotta really listen to yourself. But that's something you gotta hone a lot, right? You gotta be able to hone with being able to listen to your instincts. And being able to say, this is something I need to do. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And go in if it's going to work, obviously, but it's not the end of the world. I'm standing here telling you, every piece of shitty moment I've gone through in life, it's not the end of the world.
So, I think for reinvention, recreation, there was another word, reimagination is a word that you used. You just have to give yourself the permission,
Yes.
sometimes.
Just keep going. As I say, I got on a train and I used to say I went down a track, now I say I went up a track. So get on that train and go up that track. Life is a journey. And suddenly you'll be surprised where you end up.
So I haven't asked this question in a while on the show, but I'm going to spring this one on you.
Okay.
You get a microphone, which you have, for 15 seconds max. And that microphone's going to reach
Don't make me sing.
the entire, you can if you want. We were talking, Sarah, one of our production assistants. She said she wants to hear people sing tonight. One of 15 seconds, a world that reaches the entire microphone. No, you don't have to sing. If you could reach everyone, and I know this resonates with you, especially with She's the First kind of thing. If you could reach everyone in the world, 15 seconds, what would that message be?
About something specific?
Your microphone.
It really is be true to yourself. Just be true to yourself, follow your heart, follow your gut. I can't tell you how freeing that is to do what is right for you. What is right for me is not right for you. Just do what's right for you. And then donate to She's the First.
Denise Restauri.